Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Third Eye. This is Kelly, and today I'm here with Tom Warner. I'm so excited to speak with him today. I don't know if you guys have seen an episode of Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix. It's episode 5. It's about the Berkshire UFO incident, and Tom experienced it back in, what was it, 1969?
Yeah, Kelly, it was, and first of all, thank you for having me on your program and to talk about this really crazy night. So I appreciate that very much. It was September 1st, 1969.
Yeah, this is incredible because I thought I was really good at researching all of these different UFO incidents over the years, and this one just came out of nowhere, and I was super excited when I saw it, and I just dove right into it. And to be able to speak with you today is just wonderful.
Well, actually, I have to say that this is probably the best kept secret in our county. Okay, so that it was really pretty much kept pretty quiet up until the last probably 4 years, I would say. And then
Wow.
and then the story slowly started coming out. Actually, I was asked to do. There was actually another person who was involved in it that night who had a sighting, and he asked me to be on New England Legends, and just to have a brief appearance to say, yeah, that I saw it. And I think I was on one line. He says, "How close was it?" I said, "If I had a baseball, I could have pinged it with a baseball. I mean, it was that close." And
Wow.
then and then more and more people would ask me, and then I was asked to do be in a documentary which was out of Harvard University, and I guess it was somebody's like senior thesis or something in movies. And he said, "Well, I hear you're the guy that should be interviewed." And I said, "Okay." So he came, and we did a long interview, and he interviewed from someone was from NASA, someone was a college professor. I mean, he had a wide range, very wide a range of people to discuss this, and it was a good documentary. We didn't get into all that many details and everything, so because I still at this point didn't want all the details out, uh,
Right. Yeah, and
because
you said you had a autobiography that you were writing too that's coming out.
yeah, actually, the reason there was a couple of reasons I wrote the autobiography. Uh, One of my friends, I suggested that I talk to other people about it, and I did. And I thought, well, I'm going to write about this. And when one of the persons that was going to be in the autobiography, she suddenly died a week before I was supposed to interview her, and I decided, maybe
Oh,
I
wow.
should, you know, to get these things down to write it about my whole life story, which was it's a pretty bizarre story, and I did it one to tell the whole story, but most importantly, to help others who may have similar circumstances that they had, because this isn't, I'm not just the only one that this could happen to. So I said, okay, I'll write it. But it, the book was started long before I was asked to interview by Netflix and Unsolved Mysteries.
Wow, I can't wait to read it. I'm just really intrigued. Um, I've been fascinated by this topic for many, many years, and I'm glad that people are starting to come forward and be less afraid to talk about it. I'm so glad that you're doing this.
Yeah, it was never really my intention. It just slowly came out, slowly, slowly. And then there was an interview. I got a call from WGBH out of Boston, and he says, "Is this Tom Warner?" I said, "Depends." And he said, "Is this Tom Warner that had a UFO experience?" I go, "Now it really depends." And then he told me who it was. It was Adam Riley, and he wanted to interview when he came out from Boston and interviewed me. And they did it. They did a fairly. They did a nice job. They really did. But the part that really bothered me after that was that there were on the internet, some people used that interview and then took it apart to make their own interview. So it was like the truth wasn't being told. And and
Yeah.
and so I was like, I'm done. At that point, I was really done. And I come home and my daughter says, my daughter was a real big back in the day of Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack back in the day, and just loved the whole program. And so I said, She said, "Dad, Unsolved Mysteries called you." I said, "Oh, okay. You got to call them back." And of course I did. And the segment producer, Cindy, she was very nice. I still wasn't going to do it. And then after, a lot of convincing, I decided, that they would handle it the way it needed to be handled. And, so the owner of Unsolved Mysteries, Terry Muir of Muir Productions, and her executive, Bob Weiss, flew out from Los Angeles to interview us. And after they heard this story, they were like, "Wow, we have a story here." And
Yeah.
eventually they filmed.
Yeah, I'm glad they took it seriously. There's a lot of times people will be interviewed about these kind of circumstances, and they kind of ridicule or joke about it. And
Right.
I really like the way that they presented everything on the show regarding the stories. They did a really good job.
Yeah. Well, when they started out, there was other people that were going to be filmed in it. But some of them, for whatever reason, they backed out. And in one case, the one woman, Melanie, her brother had actually backed out, and she agreed to tell her story, which was an amazing story. Uh, I mean, all of them were amazing. I mean, like Jane Green. I don't know if you watched that. The woman who opens the beginning of this episode
Mhm.
is it's like out of like Harry Potter. It's like the
Yeah,
Gandalf kind of character walking, and she's so elegant
she
and
is. Uh-huh.
just an elegant, wonderful, beautiful woman.
Yeah.
I and yet her own children didn't know that she had an experience, and she didn't know her own children had an experience.
That
And
was
so we
crazy.
went forward, and her kids said, "But mom, you we saw it, and you didn't tell us." And she goes, "Well, you didn't tell me." And so you know that's how that went. And
Yeah.
I'm going to get a visitor here a second here. Come on, George, get down there.
Oh, I see him over there.
Come on, come on. By the way, this by the way is George. This is crazy
Oh.
George. So
Awesome. Well, if you could possibly take me back to the night that you remember everything happening, do you still look back on it with any fear, or are you more curious about it?
um, it took me about 50 years to come to grips with everything. Because I was 10 years old at the time, and it was a night like this, and you could hear the crickets, and it was very very warm. It was September 1st, 1969. It was Labor Day. And we had finished up all day swimming in we have a creek just below where our house is on our property. There was a creek that ran through it, and we'd go swimming and everything. It was at the end of the day, and it was still real hot out. And I went over to my neighbor's house and to color, because that was one of my joys was coloring. And so I went over, and Debbie, who was a little older than me, she used to say, "Stay in the lines, Tommy, stay in the lines." And we'd color for hours, just one page after picture after picture after picture. And we were going along, and then all of a sudden I just got the oddest feeling. And I had experienced mental telepathy before, but nothing like this. This was like, whoa, this was this was really just extremely strong.
So you've had
And
experiences with telepathy growing up as a child. It's just something that's kind of been there.
yeah, ever as far back as I can remember. And it really
Wow.
started up on Lake Champlain, which I write about in my autobiography. And and I went over to the window, and all of a sudden this voice was telling me, "You have to go home." And I'm like, I looked at Debbie, and Debbie said, "Are we still coloring?" I said, "I don't think so." And and all of a sudden I just bolted out of the house and ran through their house and ran through their kitchen where her grandmother and sister were. And I said, "I have to go home." And they took one look at me, and they had this most frightened look on their face. And it was all because they were seeing how frightened I was. And
Mhm.
and I bolted out of the kitchen, And to leave this building, you had to their house. It was an old farmhouse like ours. Ours is 1835. Theirs is probably about the same age, somewhere in there. And you went out the kitchen door, and then there was like a just a just an old room there. And then you went out the next door, and it was a coal room off the coal room, and there was just the hallway right out. And of course it was pretty dark, and I bolted out of there. I mean, I was a really really fast kid, and I ran across the driveway, and all of a sudden, just as I hit the end of the driveway, just before there was this big boulder, and I picture it in my mind as I'm talking, and just as I hit it, all of a sudden, all the noise was gone. All the crickets, this August September crickets, just like the noise was gone. And I remember just turning to my left and looking up, and a UFO just dropped right out of the sky.
Wow. I've heard a lot of that of the nightlife, all of the insects going quiet before something happens.
When I mean silent, I mean it's just like if you just turn a switch and it was off, just like that.
And the craft didn't make a noise or anything?
Nothing, nothing, and it just hovered right there. And I'm looking at this thing, and the first thing, I'm noticing. The first thing I noticed was the craft. It was going in, like, one part was going in one direction. These lights just kept going around and around and around, and there were colors I've never seen before. I mean,
Wow.
just colors I hadn't seen. And what amazed me was one part was going this way, and then there's another part just under it going the other way, and a third was going this way. And I'm like, whoa, it just intrigued. And as soon as I noticed all that, a beam came on me, and it was like my hands jerked back, and it was like air got sucked out of me, and then poop, and then I'm having memories of what I was seeing on this UFO.
Wow. Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, but then you fast forward, and then I get the testimony from Jane, who was watching the whole thing with her grandmother. And Jane said, I ran across the driveway, and all of a sudden her grandmother says, "What's he doing in that light? He's running, but he's not moving." And then all of a sudden, I was gone, right in the beam, just disappeared right in the beam.
And you only had, like, a few memories of that incident, of being
Well,
on the ship?
yeah, enough.
Yeah.
I get, do hypnosis. I remember enough. I mean, how much do you want to remember? I mean, I have enough memories that, just, they asked me how long I was gone. They said about 7 minutes,
Mhm.
and what happened in those 7 minutes. The one thing I do remember is seeing this girl. She was probably a little older than me, which turned out I actually ended up IDing her once I got to be a freshman in high school. I opened the door in my high school and opened up, and she was coming the other way. And I was like, oh boy, I tell you, just. But when I saw her on that ship, it's the most frightening look that I'd ever want to see on a human being. Just absolute fright. And then I have memories of seeing other kids off to my left. And every time I'd see a face or something, I'd look down. I just looked down. I didn't. And then every time I saw anything, I'd look, go and get the image and just look down. And and there was only probably 4 or 5 images that were extremely clear to me. I remember seeing look like a human, and then I looked at something that looked like an alien. And then the
Wow.
other thing that really stuck with me was seeing this table, and then some sort of panel with all kind of instruments. And
That's interesting.
what it was, I couldn't tell you. It just was, just you're observing very quickly, but yet you're kind of almost like in a fog. And the part that I write about, about time, how we perceive time. It's 60 seconds in 1 minute. There's 60 minutes in an hour, and 24 hours in a day, and it's how we perceive time. We have it measured in our mind. But there's other ways to perceive time. For instance, if if you were in a car accident, and I write about this because I was in a car accident, and it was a very high speed, 100 miles an hour, and my whole life would it flash before me, and and yet that was broken down in milliseconds, and yet in this case it was second 7 minutes was like just like a it seemed like a split second, like it was very quick. So time is we don't understand time, and perhaps that's why they can travel the way they do. They've somehow managed time differently. And but
Yeah, I
anyway,
agree. Yeah, that's
exactly.
a good hypothesis.
Yeah, it is. It is. I often wondered about time and parallel universes and all this stuff, and I write about it a little bit, and the whole meaning of the whole thing, and so I'm just going back to that night, and the next thing I knew, I was like a baby being put back down on the ground, and I clearly remember the last foot because I was flat out, and just laid down, and
Wow.
and then I'm still in the beam, and my brother was in back of me yelling, "Run, run!" I said, "I can't. It's holding me down." And to this day, I remember that perplexed feeling that how could a light holding you down? When you're 10, you're like playing fat flashlight tag or something like that, and you're
Yes.
like, yeah, you're in or something, flashlight. I'm like, this light is holding me down. And again, the mental telepathy, the same voice that talked to me when I was inside the house said, "We're almost done. We'll be done in a minute. Just relax." And I did. Just relax. And minute goes up, light goes off. I stood up, and the UFO slowly rose to clear the trees to leave the yard.
Wow.
Off it went, but with no noise, none. And as soon as it left, the crickets were back.
Oh
And,
man.
and at that moment, I looked at my brothers. They're like one brother. He's like, "Holy crap!" He says, and I just ran into the house. And I remember coming into the house, and we have a telephone that was on our wall. And that's the only thing I remember. After that, I must have gone into shock because I don't
Wow.
remember anything after that till the next morning. And I don't even
Wow.
remember just, that I got up the next morning and, went in and I started, because we were pretty independent. I grew up independent, and
Yeah.
we mowed the grass, we did this, but we also ironed our own pants. Okay, so I'm out there and I'm ironing my pants, and my mother comes in. She goes, "What are you doing?" Just getting pants ready. She goes, "Tell me, school doesn't start till tomorrow." Yeah, I just want to be ready. You know, and and then on the radio was this station WSBS, which was a local radio station, and the announcer comes on. His name was this very distinctive voice, Tom J. Tom J says something funny was going on in the South Berkshires. UFO was being reported, seen all over the South Berkshires, and the only thing I could think of was, huh, thank God wasn't the only one. So
Yeah, that's
one of those things.
insane.
You put it in your mind. You're not the only one. Now, who was the other people that saw it? That took almost 50 years to come out to, where everybody was willing to, certain people who saw it up close
Mhm.
were willing to come forward. Like my neighbor Jane, she didn't come up and, give it up until about 4 years ago. And when she told me her story, what she saw and the reasons she came forward was because when her grandmother died, just the night before her grandmother died, her grandmother said, "Jane, do you remember what happened to Tommy that night?" And she goes, "Yeah, I do, Gran." She goes, is he okay?" And, "Yeah, he's okay, Tom. Tommy's okay." And that was her last thought. She died the next morning. She never regained consciousness after
Oh,
that. And to be somebody's one of their last thoughts was of that incident.
Right.
Just showed you how impactful that was. Her entire life, she wanted to talk about it. And my
Wow.
mother had gone over the next day, and Jane is telling me, your mother came over and she was in the room when they were talking. And my mother says, we're not going to talk about this anymore. We're done. We're not talking about it ever again. And she
Oh,
never talked to me about it.
wow.
And, and it was like, I had to keep everything inside at that point. I couldn't, my brother would look at me and go, shake his head, wow, that was really bizarre. And you just couldn't talk about it. But there was what's not in that show Unsolved Mysteries was that 2 weeks after that it happened a second time, which was
Wow.
also witnessed. So there's I only know of maybe Travis Walton that would say that they saw Travis in a beam. Now you can tell me if these facts are correct, or Travis will call me up sometimes say whether it was correct or not. But they saw a beam come on Travis and they beelined it out of there. And by the way, I hope George's hairs that are flying all over here on my lap here don't get in the film here.
You're fine.
He's he's a lap cat at night. What can I say? He's a good boy. But anyway, so now after that happened, like I'm not one to say, hey, let's go out in the evening. No, 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 no. I'm like, okay, the sun's going down. I have to stay inside. And my
Mhm.
one brother said, come on, Tommy, let's go out. We'll have a catch. There's plenty of time. The sun's still up. We can have a catch for a little bit. All right, I'll go out. So we went out and I took the ball and I threw it to him. And he threw it to me. And I threw it to him. He threw it to me. And then I threw the ball to him. And as I released the ball went about 15 feet, stopped, and came right back at me and went zipping by me. And I'm like,
Wow.
what the heck just happened? And now I'm just like totally baffled. Totally baffled. I'm like, what the heck happened? And as I'm running after the ball and the ball's about to go on the road, I see my other two brothers and a neighbor running towards me, yelling, and the neighbor's yelling, did you see the UFO was right over Tommy's head? And the only thing I thought was, oh no, not again.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
was at that moment that I realized I turned around and the stars are out. And I'm like, now I'm really confused because when I released the ball, it was light out. And when the ball went by me, the stars are out, which meant
Wow.
45 minutes went by and a blink of an eye. Not even a blink
Wow.
of an eye. And I'm like, what happened? I was perplexed. What happened? And my brother, they didn't want to talk about it. I mean, that was like, and I think not long after that, I insisted I saw an orb in my room and made my brothers check, make sure that nothing was on the roof. And, I just like wasn't sleeping well.
Mhm.
Sleep was hard. When you're at 10 years old and all of a sudden, you don't want your friends to find out. Tommy
Right.
sleeps with a teddy bear.
Yeah.
you know, in fact, that teddy bear hung out with me, for many years. I was, it's like after a while you're nice. Look at that's cute. He has a teddy bear. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just it was just my way of dealing with just nightmares and you know
Yeah.
things that would happen, and it's not like it ever stopped. It never stopped.
So is that still ongoing today? Like, do you still have, nightmares or strange dreams or any kind of like paranormal activity that kind of has just followed you throughout life?
Yeah, yeah. That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can name
Wow.
an incident that was really bizarre, and I'll send you the pictures because I took pictures. And the other one place that this UFO was down in Sheffield called this place called the Bridge, which was where Tom Reed and his family had seen it. And there was a restaurant right by the bridge, and somebody needed to ride down the bridge. And I said, "All right, I'll go down. I'll bring you down," and I did. and I dropped my friend off, and I'm driving home. I'm thinking like, what the heck is that up there? And I saw light, but I'm like, that can't be. Nah, it's not going to happen again. I just couldn't believe that. But I just kept seeing this weird light. And when I got home, I pulled in the driveway, and up in my lilac tree, there was a green orb, and it was about the size of maybe a grapefruit. And it was green, bright. And I had my camera. I had my camera out in front of me as I was taking pictures. I'm following this. I'm going click, click, click. I'm just taking pictures, just squeezing the thing because I want to see it. And it went from the lilac tree down on the house, down into the snow. And I didn't know what pictures, if I had gotten any. And then it went closer, closer. And it was the last picture, the thing I saw, it was right in front of me. And went right into me.
Oh, wow.
It went right into me. And it was like, whoa. So I came in, I said to my wife, I told her about it. I took the pictures. So she took her camera, went out and took pictures. Nothing. It's gone. It's gone. What it was?
Did you feel any pain from it when it happened or anything afterwards?
I felt a shot of adrenaline. Whether that was, like, what the heck was that?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. But I just recently shared that, you're probably a handful of people that I've told that to. It was like,
Wow.
I mean, I can't describe it. I mean, I've seen orbs. I've seen orbs on my, on my property before, but this was quite unique. You could
And it
actually
was
see it in
intelligent.
the pictures. Sorry?
It looked like it was intelligent, perhaps, maybe because it was coming right towards you.
Well, I think I think they're probably some sort of energy with, and how they're sent. I don't know. I mean, I write about orbs, and I think they're like psychic, whatever, some sort of energy, definitely intelligence of something, some sort of intelligent energy. I mean, it was like, here I pull in the driveway, boop, it's right there, and it goes boom, and right into me. It's like it
Wow.
was a matter of probably maybe 10 seconds that it went on, bop, 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 boom. And when it was coming at me, I'm like, this thing's coming at me. And I kept taking pictures. And the pictures will show it's coming towards me. I didn't get the last one it was on because it was like, it went by the camera and it was like, that was it. Pretty bizarre.
Wow. Yeah.
But
Wow.
that was like, that's mild compared to some of the things that happen, so, but getting back, I'm going to take a little sip here if you don't mind.
Yeah, go
George
for it.
Yeah, that's just cat hairs here. Oh, sorry, folks. Anyway, this is a real comfortable interview, by the way, and I appreciate that. So anyway, after the second incident, I'm like, no one's really talking. We talk among ourselves some, just a little bit, but we didn't even want to talk about it. We just didn't talk about it. We knew about it, but we didn't talk about it. The neighborhood knew about it. Kids in the neighborhood, no one. And it was like when I grew up, I mean, it's not like I wasn't popular in school. I was very well known in school. I mean, I was, happy-go-lucky and everything in school. But my brothers would all have friends that would come over. All of them, they didn't come to visit Tommy.
Oh.
It's like it's. I think it's worse than being a black sheep. Because it was like no, they didn't come to my house. No, they didn't come. I knew them. I knew all my. It's not like we weren't friendly in school. We were. And maybe in high school I had a best friend that came over and stuff. But after some strange things started happening in high school, he just completely backed away too. It was like just none. And
Wow.
but it was. I was very fortunate that where we went on vacation, which was up on Lake Champlain.
Mhm.
I had a lot of friends up there. They stood pretty true through my high school years and stuff like that. It was good.
Well, that's good.
But here's the crazy thing, Kelly, is that 3 years after when I was 13, we go up to Lake Champlain, and it was the beginning, 13, you're meeting other kids, more freedom. I could, take a little rowboat out, and there was a beach that was down below the property we rented, and there was a raft, and all the kids would go down the raft and swim and swim and swim till you turn blue. And I'm swimming in, and it was about supper time to go in, and I swim in, and this kid's next to me, and we swim in together. And once we got into, let's say, waist water deep, and he's next to me, he goes, "You know about UFOs?" I said, "No, I don't." I didn't want to talk about it. I just, nah, nah. Back home was ruined enough. I'm not going to talk about it up here. I'm just making friends. And I said, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Yes, you do." I said, "Well, how would you know that?" And he looked at me, serious as could be. And he says, "Because I was on that UFO, and I remember you and your brother."
I was going to ask you about that.
And he
There's a lot of
remembered,
people that talk about that.
and he
Yeah.
remembered me.
Yeah.
So here I was, the first time where I ID'd Melanie. And the second one, someone ID'd me on a UFO. And I'm sure I'm the
Yeah.
only person that's ever been ID'd on the ground in a UFO beam, disappear in a UFO beam, and has been ID'd on a UFO.
And so, do you feel closer to these people when you meet them? Melanie had said that, she kind of sees you as like family, after
Oh,
that
we
incident.
are. I mean, it was like, and it was really bizarre because Melanie wasn't going to be in the show. It was her brother that was considering talking. He opened up about it, and there was Melanie was doing some political thing for somebody that was running for district attorney or something like that, and I walked up, and she's in front of me, and I recognize her just by her eyes, just looking into her eyes, and I said, "Yeah," and she goes, I said, "I need to call you." I said, I'm like, I just had to tell her. And she goes, "Well, what's it about?" I said, "No, I have to call you." And so I called her up, and I said, "Melanie, there's something I have to tell you." She goes, "What's that?" I said, "Back when this UFO business took place," I said, "I had one memory of seeing someone on a UFO." And she goes, "Yeah?" I said, "It was you." And you could have heard a pin drop.
Oh my gosh. That took
And,
some bravery on your part to tell her that.
well, I am compelled to only tell the truth. And and when I say that, I mean it sincerely. When I was 17, I came within 20 seconds of dying. And when you're about ready to be burned alive in a car that's about ready to blow up, you're ready to make some deals. And the one thing I promised
Wow.
God was I will always tell the truth. And that's I've always been that way, So if I have to tell somebody the truth, I have to, I had to tell
Yeah.
them. It was
That's
like,
really inspiring though. That's wonderful.
I mean, I just, if you want to ask me a question, you'll get a question. But whether you know, I always say it may not be the answer you want, but it's going to be what I know, and that's how I am. I mean, I just have to be that way. It's my makeup. You know,
I think more people should be like that.
and I have to tell you, my book. You know, I always get this. Say like, well, and when I was 13, we got in this discussion. I was raised Irish Catholic. My mother was Irish. My grandmother was 100% Irish. She was from Ireland, and and so we were raised Catholic because that's what my mother said we were going to be. And that was my dad's deal. He could marry my mother, but he had to convert to Catholicism. I mean, okay, so us kids naturally that's where we are. George, my cat's shedding. It's terrible. He's terrible. Sorry about that, folks.
You're fine. No worries.
It's you don't see it, but hairs are like going all over. It's like He's like shedding, and he won't get off my lap. So I'm just carrying on here with George on my lap here.
I just
So anyway,
hope the quality's good here for you. I keep trying to figure out if there's a way I can
no, I'm all
just
right.
a little bit. Everything looks good on your end.
I I don't know. How do I
Okay.
look?
You look fine.
Okay, that's all that counts. You look great. Okay. So anyway, so back to when I was 13 years old, right? So we're in catechism class, and I don't even know how the discussion came up, but somebody brought it up, and they looked at the priest and they said, "He saw a UFO." And the priest came over. He goes, "No, you didn't." I said, "Well, yeah, I did." He goes, "No," and he put his arm around me. He says, "You have Satan in you." I was furious.
Wow.
I was furious. I took his arm away from me, like, "Get out, get away from me." And I went into the next room and I said, "No, I'm leaving." And I walked right out of the building, walked all the way home. And
Wow.
and it had such an impact on me. So I didn't want to talk about it. It's like, no. And occasionally my brother would talk about it. And in high school, I went to talk to, I'd start thinking there was somebody I could talk to about it. And they'd look at you like you had lobsters crawling out of your ears. And I mean,
Mhm.
I had some close friends. They're up in Alaska now. A couple, Susie and Wyatt Wheeler. They're up in Anchorage, you know, they've grew up, religious and all that, but yet they said, who knows? We're just not meant to know or anywhere. But I've often been asked, how does this, how do you, how does this affect somebody who may believe in religion? And it's like, we're we're not meant to know everything right at this point in time. If you went back, say, 200 years, right? And you could, this whole time concept that we talk about, if they could see that you and I are talking and having a conversation, they wouldn't believe it. It'd be like,
Yeah, they think it was magic.
magic. Oh yeah, if it was at Salem, Massachusetts, they probably would have burned us at the stake as witches. You know what I mean? Really,
Yep.
it's like they just wouldn't believe it. And here I was 10 years old telling people that I have an image of another planet like Earth, and that I was shown what that was like. And that is, it's both amazing and a tremendous responsibility. And the responsibility comes in because my message to humanity and the message about, how, what we're doing wrong and what we have to do to be good to each other, because we're not getting off, as I said in an interview before on a documentary, we're not getting off this planet anytime soon. We have these rockets, right? And George is shutting like crazy. And and Chase, George, you're terrible. And you're not, we're not, I think I gotta get rid of George or something. He's like shutting like terrible. That might be part of your edit there. Anyway, sorry folks, really. Anyway, so we were talking about, another planet, and it's like, when you're think back when you're little, and you think back and you go, I remember when I was little, and what it was like when I believed in Santa, and I got a, presents under the tree, and because our life is a movie, and it's, the human brain encodes things. So we have a recall. You'll be able to recall this conversation. But for me, and that's a movie, it's like a movie that plays. But for me, I have two movies that play. And it's a movie on another planet, and then there's my life here. And the moral lessons that are given to me to, and through my life, I I had all these events to prove that it was true, and
Wow.
they became more bizarre over time, including three instances. One, I would say, two incidences I'd be willing to talk about with human alien hybrids. And in the one incident with the human alien hybrid, they left me a note.
Oh,
And
wow.
and the second incident, I was in a grocery store and I see this woman, and I was just in for like, five things at the grocery store and then go pick up my wife at a local library. And and I remember I saw her um, in the aisle off to my right, and she looked familiar. I didn't know why she looked familiar, but she just looked familiar to me. And she sort of looked at me, and then I went another aisle, and there she was again. And I went a third aisle, and there she was again. I'm thinking, like, is she following me? Nah, could be. I'm thinking, like, and I went in the last aisle and got up, and George, you're making my nose itch. And say hello, George. Say hello to everybody. Hello.
Oh,
Hello.
hi, darling.
He probably went, guy's itching his nose all the time. Of course, I got a cat on my lap that's driving me crazy here. And, hey, Christine. She's gone. Forget it. Anyway, so George, he's just going to hang out with us. So anyway, so in the last aisle, I see her, and as I get to check out, all of a sudden she cuts in front of me in the line, doesn't have anything in her hand, and has a candy bar, and pays with a 20, and looks at me. And when she's looking at me, I realize she's not blinking. And I'm like, she must be like a human alien hybrid, because there's one thing that the first human alien hybrid I came in contact with, but one thing is they don't blink. See, you blinked. You blinked again. See? I mean, it's humans must blink. And I said, and she goes, "You're the artist." And I said, "Yeah." And when she said that, I'm like, "Oh boy, someone recognized me as an artist." And I gave her one, and I handed her my card. And she goes, "I know where you live. I know who you are. I'm here to protect you. You're fine now." And she went.
Wow.
So I went to pick up my wife. I got my wife, and she goes, "How'd you get that burn in your jacket?" And there was a hole about that big, a burn right through my jacket.
Wow.
I never felt it. I didn't know who was that close to me to do that, but it happened in this store.
Wow. That's so interesting. I've heard of a lot of people who have experiences of running into strange people in public like that, and then like kind of just giving out a weird message, something that doesn't make sense at the time sometimes. Then later on
And
you're like, "Oh, that's what they were talking about. This is
and
weird."
the first one was bizarre too. It's in my book, and it's a very complex story, very complex. It has to do with a painting that I inherited, and in this painting, there was an image of the artist that was hidden, and it was an allegorical painting. And in it was, in a part of the painting, there was an image of the artist, and then when I took a picture of it, I blew it up, and there was another image, and the third image as I blew it up was an alien.
Wow.
Painting was 1906. An alien
Wow.
in a painting,
I need to see this.
1906. Okay, so I have pictures of it. So the painting was put into a prestigious art institute behind locked vaults. The human alien hybrid, when he came in contact with me in a research center, it's like he picked my brain. He knew, I mean, he knew right what to ask me. And I'm like a robot giving information up to this guy, because I was so cocky that, this thing's behind a vault. You're not getting to it. You could say, "Go ahead, try if you want." And I went back a month later, and the whole painting was cleaned off. All that stuff was wiped off, including all the symbols there were symbols on the painting. I have no idea what they meant. and there was all kinds of symbols. But I do have a picture of it though, of the alien.
Oh, I would love to see it whenever you get a chance.
My book, but it was not. So the whole thing with him was he wanted this connection, and he left me a note in my bag, and the only persons that were there was myself, him, and the person who was running the place, and that was the only people in that room. And when we were there, all of a sudden the guy who was running it was a research center, said, "Did you see where that guy went?" I said, "No, I was busy on my computer, And he says, "Stay right here." He goes, he comes back. I mean, this guy looked white as a ghost, And he says, "He's gone." I said, "Well, he must have walked by you." He couldn't have walked by me. And there's only one exit out, and he was gone. Gone.
It's that whole time thing.
Yeah, and I looked at the guy. I said, "I'm sorry, but I was spooked. I was really spooked." I'm like, "Was that what the hell was that?" And I said, "Well, I got to go." He says, "Well, you don't have to go." "Yes, I do. I'm out of here." And then when I got home, I opened up my bag where I had my computer in one of those bag you slip it into. And there was a note in there, and I called him up. I said, "Did you leave a note in my bag?" And he says, "No." I said, "Are you sure you didn't leave a note in my bag?" He says, "I promise you, I didn't leave a note in your bag." And so that eliminated me and him. So there was only one person who wrote the note, and he slipped it into my bag.
Wow.
And it took me many years. There's only two other human beings that knew the meaning of that. And one was some spiritual leader. He had heard of it, but he wouldn't discuss it with me though. And another guy discussed it with me, and he was in a military operation or whatever, and they were sent to guard a facility, and they had shoot to kill orders, and he drew what he saw because the door was open, and these guys are young guys, and they're like, so they went in, and they said it was about a 7-foot gray alien, and this guy's could read lips, and what the one scientist or whoever was guarding this thing said to the other was exactly what was written on my note.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
So that was crazy. So I've had all kinds of people contact me. I've talked to them all. I've talked to them all.
Have you had any experiences of since your incident from childhood? Has anyone followed you, or have you ever had the feeling, have you been contacted by military or seen kind of any military presence in that UFO incident when you were younger? Did you see any kind of anything?
Well, when I was 4, there was an attempted kidnapping of me when I was 4.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't look human. They looked like, best way to describe it was Barbie dolls. It just, I'd never seen anything like it. There was 3 guys and three girls. They're probably in their looked like they were in their early 20s, but they were young. And they were in a convertible, and they went by real slow and looking at me. And I was a unique looking child. I was a towhead. I was like pure blonde. And they went by, and they're looking at me, and the car went by, and then it went back around the block, which you could see that it went down the hill. I could see it was going back down, and then I could see, hear it, and knew it was coming back. And I'm kind of hidden by the tree, and it went by real slow, and then it stopped over where the Shaw's property was, and it stopped. And when it stopped, I ran real quick across the street and hid in a bush. And then it slowly backed up, and it stopped right by the tree. And one of the women called out and said, "Come out, little boy, we have candy." No, I got to tell you, normally candy would have had Tommy running out. But I knew, my heart was pounding. And then I heard that, mental telepathy boy, that voice call out, call to your grandfather, but don't use your voice. And I did. And my grandpa came out, and my grandfather was a sharpshooter for the New York National Guard at the time. And he would have shot the driver if he didn't stop. But when my grandfather got up to the car, he had a frightened look on his face. And I'll never forget it. He just looked really frightened. And they just drove off. My grandfather, didn't do anything about it. And he says, Tommy, we're not going to talk about this to anybody. And we didn't talk. Just, we moved our slide away from the toy slide, slide. We moved the slide
Wow.
away from the road, but that was it.
Wow.
But, no, I've had all kinds of, just a lifetime of it.
Wow. When can I get a copy of your
Well,
autobiography?
thankfully, the book just came out of edit yesterday,
Okay.
and the cover's being done this week, and within a month, the book's going to be out.
Oh, I'm so excited. And is it Beyond the Stars? Is that what
Beyond
was
the
the name?
Stars, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and I'll contact you, and we can put up links or whatever to any of your sites, but it's I don't know I don't know anybody who's uh, been witnessed in a UFO beam, uh, witnessed on a UFO, witnessed somebody else on a UFO,
Mhm.
and I've even got to learn who my guardian angel was, which was another bizarre incident. So I
Wow.
guess I just have with all this stuff that happened, I just had very strange talent to be able to see different things. What can you say? You look at somebody, you said, "I see dead people." Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on over. Yeah, Tom sees dead people. Come on over. Come on over. Let's have a nice picnic here. No, it's like you tell them a couple stories. That's it. You exit the campfire. And no one's they don't want to hear too much. It's like someone says that. All I have to say is it's a dark and stormy night, and they go, "Oh, Warner's telling a story. I'm out of here." That's it.
Yeah, some people just aren't ready to hear things
Well,
and aren't as open-minded as other people, so
I've learned to not talk to people, and the biggest story was the UFO, and had never had any intention. My intention was to write the book and just have a few copies and put it up on my shelf up here, in this historic shelf up here, and that was it. And maybe give some copies to friends and just say, okay, we recorded the story, and
mhm.
every time it started coming out, the truth wasn't being told, because how the story was originally being told was, well, one guy was telling his story down in Sheffield, and it was about him. And I kept saying, no, it's not about one person, and it's not about me too. I mean, it's not just about me, because other people experience it. Did Melanie had an experience on a UFO? Tom and Reed and his family did too. And other people saw it, and I really had my share of it. That's for sure. I mean, no one, you know, had someone been at the bridge with Tom Reed, they might have seen him be beamed up, but they didn't see him be beamed up. But for me, someone was actually watched it happen,
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
that hasn't happened. It hasn't happened, you know. And
So, through it the experience, do you feel like you've come away from all this and the stuff you're still experiencing? Do you feel like you have more of kind of like a guardian angel or, people kind of looking out for you in a way? Or is it,
yeah,
do you still fearful of it?
I've always felt I had a guardian angel. I always felt that, but I also felt that there was this other force out there that could communicate with me, which happens to be the UFO, whatever intelligent thing that was. You take humans, humans tag sharks, and they can tell that this great white shark went up, left Florida, went up, and they went up Cape Cod, where all the those Massachusetts tourists go, and it's
Mhm.
off Cape Cod, chum 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 chum, Jaws, and you track it. and only, I'm probably tracked, but it's just how it is. But everybody wants to know now. I mean, I've even gotten, emails from people in the government that want to talk to me now. So, it's like,
How do
okay.
you feel about that one?
Um, a little nervous. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes me a little nervous. You got to read my book, because there's a part in there
Yeah.
that, that
Okay.
I probably talked to, I mean, I talked to some very, very powerful people, and they're like, you know, one person in particular, he was, I can't tell you how I came about this, but it's in my book. It was, this person was high up in the mafia, and I had to keep that secret too. But the one thing that he talked to me about was the so-called Men in Black. And it was
Right.
like, hey, yeah. I'm like, I'm glad. I couldn't talk about anything. I couldn't talk about his conversation with me, because that was a promise to him that I wouldn't talk to him until they long died and gone to heaven. That was my promise to him. And then I'd meet somebody whose father was in the Men in Black, and I couldn't talk about it. And she would say, "Look, you know too much." This is when I was 30. I was told, "You can't talk. You can't talk, because you'd be assassinated." And I was 30, and I'm like, forget that. I'm not talking. Forget it. Now it's like everything's coming out, and the government's like saying, "Oh, by the way, here's our Navy pilots, and yeah, we had them tracked, and here's the vintage, and we're gonna, Marco Rubio down there is like, Marco's like, okay, I think we need to talk about this now."
Yeah.
Really?
It makes you curious to think that maybe,
Really?
I mean, they
So
don't have all the answers, and
I
that's
want
why
you
they
to
kind
think
of
about
reach
this.
out to people like you.
So Netflix, which goes out worldwide, comes out, and there was a lot of research that was done on this show, but there was a point where the Air Force was also talked to about this show, and they knew about it, and we knew that they knew about it, because they accidentally sent back an email that was accidentally was I was on the list somehow, and it came back to me. So I knew they knew about it. I'm like, oh my God, why are they saying this stuff? I'm like, this is crazy. Why aren't they admitting all this stuff? I mean, because now they're here. We had an email from the Air Force, came back hot. Meaning this is a hot topic here. And so the Air Force was like, I'm really sorry, we don't have anything to say on this matter. And all of a sudden Netflix is saying, oh yeah, really? Because we're coming out with a story on UFOs, and it's going to be pretty convincing. And we came out in July, and guess what? What did the government do? They came out and they said, these UFOs may be real.
It's about time.
And it's great, because in it I talk about my book. I talk, and too late now. I talk about an Air Force pilot who had a lock on a UFO,
Oh, wow.
and what they did to him.
Oh,
And
wow.
was it just so it's good. So coming forward, it's not. It helps other people that have these experiences, but it also brings to light that we need to maturely discuss this issue
Mhm.
and stop this stuff that humans are the only species in God's green earth and God's universe out there, that we're it. And
Right.
it's time to really acknowledge that, and acknowledge the problems that comes with that, and it's like we have more in common with we're all human beings. That's it. And when we can finally accept that, and not attack each other, as the first thing I hear, are you a liberal, are you a conservative? I'm a human being.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I look at life a lot different than most people. I mean, it's enough that I say I'm an American, but I think of myself as a human being. And that's it. I have no hatred or anything like that. I just want to do this job that I was, that came about, and that's to be this messenger, and I'm doing it for that reason. I just want to help people, and on this subject, and if I can help one person, I'm great. But it appears that I've been helping a lot
Yeah.
of people because I'm getting a
Yeah.
lot of letters, and
Yeah. I
know,
think it's wonderful what you're doing.
and it's like I wrote the book. I put in examples, I put in pictures, I put in whatever I have in there, and the whole meaning, and it's all in there. And it's a story of some little boy, all the near death experiences that I've experienced, probably about a dozen in my lifetime.
Wow.
Near death within a minute or less, or one gulp away, or whatever, and everything that was told to me, and what I had to do, and it was all a purpose. And some of them are real miracle stuff. I mean, you, you see people and they go like, a lot of people go to churches and synagogue and everything, they pray and everything, and everything. But for me, it went even further. I'm going to show you, Tommy. I'm going to show you a miracle, a miracle. And I'll give you one. So after I'm up at Lake Champlain, his voice tells me, there's something that you need to have to show that this is real. And this voice tells me where to go. And I said, reach into the water, reach down, pick up that rock. And I pick up a rock, and I said, this? Yes. And I take the rock and I put it in my pocket. And that's a gift for you. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So the next day I take a picture of the rock. And on that rock is a picture of a woman that looks like with like almost like wings, right? Holding a baby child, a blonde that looks like me.
Oh,
Now, what's the odds?
wow.
10 trillion billion to 1? I don't know.
It's weird how things are connected sometimes.
Yeah, the whole book is like that. It's that's what the book is about. The whole book's like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
everything.
synchronicities.
Jeff, you know, I met this one. There was this one doctor. He's a skin doctor, and I was a painting contract. I did painting contracting for many years, and so I just said, okay, I'm going to get a baseline test. So just say, okay, if anything, I can't see that my back. And just check it out, make sure everything's good. So he comes up to me. We go in this room, and he turns out the light, and he has this like a blue light or whatever, and he starts going over your body with it, and all of a sudden he stops. Goes there, puts on the light. He looks at me. He goes back and does it again. He turns on the light again. I said, Doc, am I okay? He goes, hold on a second. He does it a third time. He turns on the light. He says, there's a legend that certain people glow. The body actually glows. I said, oh, really? And he says, yeah. He says, you glow. I'm like, I said, is that good or bad? I glow? Oh my God. I mean, like Chernobyl glow or what, Doc? He's kind of laughed. He says, no, literally. He says, there's like a glow that comes off your body. I'm like, no. And he looks at me and he goes, there are no accidents. There's only appointments. Certain people, he says, are meant to meet certain people. It's for a reason. There are no accidents. You're meant to meet, like I was meant to meet you. You were meant to reach out to me. It has a purpose. And you have to understand what your purpose in life is. And for me, it was, I mean, a UFO, 10 years old, beams me up, gives me visions of another planet.
I think it's all connected, though. I mean, I've noticed a lot of people who have had, experiences of sightings of UFOs,
Yeah, right.
abductions, things like that. They all kind of just find each other. Everyone's starting to find each other more over the past few years. I've noticed
More
everyone's
and
just
more.
connecting, and I think that there's something behind that.
The pace, because I think people are like, they're thinking more, you know? And that's the name of my book, Beyond the Stars. I mean, for us, our thinking, if you go back to a period of time when everybody thought the earth was flat. And then some guy goes out fishing and he goes, wow, it's not flat. But I'm not going to tell anybody. But the guys on his ship eventually tell somebody, and they tell somebody, and they go, it's not flat. It's round. And it goes around. And everybody goes, no way. And I was the kid who said, there's other planets. And they're just like Earth. And they can communicate. And there's good out in the universe and there's bad out in the universe. Just like on Earth, there's good and there's bad. And I hear some people say, "Oh, I had that, UFO, and there's monster." I didn't have that. I had only good.
That's
Was I
that's
thought
wonderful.
because I was good? Because it was I was meant to be? I don't know. I mean, I have a strong I have a strong belief system in me. It's ingrained in me. It's just who I am, you know. And it's like,
Since your experiences started, have you had more experiences of like telepathy or just being interested in subjects you wouldn't normally be interested in, like science, math, like
well,
anything that's different that since your
well,
experiences started?
I'm an artist. I'm a watercolor artist,
Yeah,
and
I saw some of your paintings. I really like them.
yeah, and I paint both consciously and subconsciously. I know how the conscious part of me paints. The subconscious part of me, I have no idea. There's say the painting I did of the UFO experience that was on the show. When I did that painting, I blocked out where the shape of the UFO was first, and I wanted to just concentrate on the colors of the sky, what it looked like and everything, and when I did and I was done and the painting was done, to the left of the UFO, you'll see a number 69, which 1969. I never painted that in there. I never took a marker and went 6 and a 9. It appeared. It was done when I was subconsciously, I was thinking 1969, and it appeared. And if you look at the UFO beam, there's like an alien reaching down. Did I intend that? No, it was what I was thinking, you know. And there's a face in the sky in that UFO painting. Did I put that in there? No, I'm not that talented. I'm not that talented to paint consciously like that. And so these are bizarre talents that I have, and it's you know, and I see things in the future that happen. I see things before they happen, and I'm told, it's mental telepathy that still goes on. All that stuff goes on every day.
Hmm. Have you
Mm.
gotten any like feeling or messages just about the future, like near future? Do you get a feeling like something's coming or something's going to happen? Anything like that?
I wrote the book as almost like a warning that we need to take care of each other. We have to get over this garbage. fighting
Mhm.
politically and everything. It's garbage. It's garbage.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, someone say, "Are you a Democrat or a Republican?" Who cares? Who cares? I mean, do you think they care up in outer space whether you're from Mexico or United States?
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you. The answer is no. Okay, no. You know, and it's like, you know, it doesn't matter. I mean, I get letters all over the world, Central America, Europe, everywhere. They've seen it everywhere. And it's not. And someone said, "Well, it's military. It's military." I'm like, look, I'll tell you what. If any of the major countries had anything that could go as fast as these, they'd control the world right now, because that's how humans are right now. Because we haven't reached the maturity level to handle any of that yet. We haven't. We're like, it's like my dog's bigger than your dog. And that's how. That's why we had the Cold War. Well, my weapon's bigger than your weapon. Oh, by the way, we can blow the damn thing up 50 times in 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's dangerous to progress so much in technology and yet no one can get along.
You
It's a
know,
nasty combination.
you know, I've met people that after the Cold War was over, right? People emigrated out of some of these communist countries, and I've met some of them and got to be friends with them. And one guy, he was in the Czech army, and he'd do the high step like the Russians, the high step and
Mm.
everything. And I said, Alex, stop it! You're scaring me here. He says, oh, we were scared to death of the Americans. We thought every American had a bazooka gun. I said, no, we may have a few shotguns, but we don't have bazooka guns. Come on, what do you think we're like that or something? And it was like, he goes, no, I was scared to death of America, because that's how they were raised. And I mean, then you turn on and you watch TV, after the Cold War broke, and there's, I can't remember, different tennis players from different countries, and you're like, wow, they're no different than we are. They're just, people people want a few things. They want a roof over their head, they want to be fed, and they want to feel secure. And that's just how human beings are, ever since caveman days,
Mhm.
and it's like we're all human. And when we finally can accept that and not be this hate all the time, and I try to, there's very few times I will refer back to a biblical quote or anything like that, because I'm not I'm not trying to, hey, loop this, or
Right.
but there's one that I always go to, and that's on the road to Jericho. How you treat a stranger. How do you treat a stranger? And
Mhm.
it's like, and that's how I try to live my life, and that's why I wrote this, and it's just to help people. That's all. That's
That's
it. Help
wonderful.
people, you know. And if I can help people by, am I going to take ridicule? Are you kidding me? I'm known wherever I go. Everywhere I go. I went into a store a deli the other day. I sit down, and my friends over here, and it's the COVID six, as I call it. They're 6 feet up, and well, they might have been a little closer, but this little kid, he's with his mother, and I said, oh, how old are you? And he says, I'm 10. I said, oh, 10. And he starts grinning and everything. He goes, we know who you are. We watched you on vacation. And I get that all the time, and the kids are always they're a dead giveaway, because they'll start looking and grinning, looking at their parents, and then high fiving their parent. One kid, when we were up in Upper New York State, the kid high fives his dad and looks at me again. And I said, "How you doing, buddy?" "Good," he says, and then he high fives his dad again, and his father looks at me. He goes, "You're the last person I expected to see today." And it's like and I have people point at me all the time. It's like, you know, Netflix, and thank you, Netflix. They and Unsolved Mysteries and Terry Meir Productions, and they did such a fine job. And what they did is it's a platform, and it allows me to speak to people like you, and talk about issues that are very deep, and it's, and George is sleeping, by the way.
Oh. Oh, well, I appreciate you for talking to me so much. I mean, there's more questions that I want to ask, but I'm sure I'll just keep talking
I'll
to
tell
you
you what.
over
I'll tell you
time.
what.
And
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. When my book comes out, and when the
okay,
book
okay.
is out, we can. I'll answer more questions, and we can talk about the book, and you can ask. You're going to have a lot more questions after you read the book.
Yeah, I'm gonna have little sticky notes on like
You're gonna
every
have
other
sticky
page.
notes and go like, "Oh my God, what's this mean? Are you kidding me on this?" And the whole thing, and I really
Yeah,
appreciate all your your fans out there that listen to your podcasts and everything, and you know and that you reached out to me and everything. I really appreciate it very much.
yeah. Hey, we're all connected, right? There's a
We're
reason
all
for it.
we're all connected, and when we finally understand that, I mean, we just, we can let go of the hate and, that sort of thing. And, just realize we're all just human beings. And it doesn't matter if you're from, Nice, France, or, I have friends all over the world, and
Yeah,
everybody,
yeah. That's
everybody,
a beautiful message. That's like a perfect way to end this, isn't it? That's a
I
beautiful
always,
message.
my saying is this: listen, listen to the angels, fly with the aliens.
I like that. I'll keep that.
All right. You take
All
care
right.
now. Okay.
Thank you. You as well. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch, and we'll do, once the book's out, Beyond the Stars. We'll have another chat. How's that?
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you all.
All right. Good night.
Night.